In recognition, before we hear from Phoebe, I would like to recognize it is Phoebe's birthday. Happy birthday, Phoebe. Thank you for joining us on your birthday. And I've been given strict instructions to kick you out once your report is done. So,
there is cake waiting for me at home, so I am excited. I didn't print my things today, but hopefully you can see me. Does everyone like my haircut? Got it yesterday. Okay, so we are so busy at the high school, and we're back from April break, so it's like some short months ahead, but they're so busy, so there's lots to share. Number one, a humongous congratulations to Joe Morris, who was a Region 10 student of the quarter this quarter, so nice work to Joe and all the awesome Region 10 students. Our seniors have gone off on senior projects, so they are hard at work doing all sorts of awesome things. So if you have a senior in your life, definitely ask them about that, because there's some amazing projects this year. Juniors took the SAT on the Wednesday before April break. That was so fun. Our math team competed in the state meet a few weeks ago, and they got 8th place out of 24 teams, so big congrats to our mathletes. We had an FHS alum, Joey Burke, visit the Endeavor classes to share about his journey after high school, and the Endeavor program also got to attend the Building Trades Convention, which was at the Augusta Civic Center, and they learned about all sorts of different career paths and trades that are within the construction industry. Students in the outing club went to Harpswell and Orris Island to do some hikes and spend some time outside. And students in Ms. Draper's PE class met with trainers from the organization Prevention, Action, and Change, which trains students in self-empowerment and self-defense knowledge. So students in Ms. Draper's class got to learn about setting boundaries and some strategies to manage dangerous real-life situations. And finally, members of the Student Leadership Committee have been hosting trainings and presentations to other leadership groups in the school, such as Student Council and our advisory leaders, to help boost leadership skills that already exist at our school and inspire maybe some new leaders. So we have lots of fun things going on. We're so busy. It's like 35 more days or something. So yeah, we're doing well though.
I wasn't sure if she was going to mention it, but I did get to see Phoebe's inaugural tennis career match the other day, and it went well. You guys should all take in a match if you can. Very entertaining. You've never watched so much fun happening on the court. So well done, Phoebe.
Yeah, and if there's any tennis college scouts out there, I am accepting offers. So we do have a match tomorrow in York and on Friday at Freeport High School. So definitely come to that, because I'm an exhibition player, which means that the matches that I play don't actually count. But it's just because I'm so good that they just want to give the other team a chance. So
She was clearly having a blast, so. All right, and if you do have seniors in your life and you think they've gone off the deep end because you see them walking around with goggles on their head, it's a whole thing. Don't worry, they're okay. It's a game. So I had forgotten about the whole goggle thing. All right, we're going to wait and watch Phoebe leave so I can tell Jen I've done my job. Thank you. All right, so we will move on to public comment. All right, so there'll be another opportunity if the crowd comes in for public comment at the end of our agenda, but we will keep moving on to item 8, report from the superintendent.
Okay, 8A, resignations. We've received a resignation from Sean Moore, DCS STEM teacher, at the end of the 24-25 school year. Samantha Creech, Moore Street School Grade 1 teacher, end of the 24-25 school year. Julia Grotchel, DCS Grade 1 teacher, end of the 24-25 school year, and Steve Bocconfuso, FMS educational technician, at the end of the 24-25 school year, and we wish them all well. We have a couple of new hires of support staff. Rose Walker has joined DCS as an ed technician, and we welcome Casey Earlbach to Pownell Elementary School as an administrative secretary for the 25-26 school year. So yes, we are beginning to hire folks for next year as well. And that's the end of the report.
Okay, thank you. All right, so as mentioned in the adjustments, we are going to jump ahead a little bit. We're going to move on to item 12A. I have two different motions.
Start with the discussion, and then there's the separate motion.
That's a separate motion? Okay, great. So to start our discussion, do I have a motion for that's not a motion. Discussion and possible action? But it's written as a motion. Let's just talk about it first.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to give a little history for members of the public and for the board to jog everyone's memory. On February 28th, 2024, the board voted to accept a gift of approximately $3.6 million from the Norman B. Stetson Trust and take the necessary steps for the district to receive the gift, which included authorizing the superintendent to sign associated and legal and financial documents. So we're very fortunate from a benefactor as part of their trust to receive the scholarship money. So that was our first step in this process. On May 30th of '24, all our financial documents were filed, and we received an initial disbursement of $3,081,012. We discussed in June that there were really two options for how to manage this scholarship. One of those options was that RSU 5 would manage the funds in the scholarship. And we'd work collaboratively with our banking institution, which at that, it was Bath Savings, that's where the funds were distributed to manage the financial aspect, and Freeport High School would determine the criteria for selection and award the scholarship. The other option was to have the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation manage the funds and the scholarship. My recommendation to the board at that time in June, I said both entities could manage the funds and they certainly could award the scholarship, but the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation offers something that we simply could not do as we didn't have the capacity to do, and that is the mentor experience for the duration of the awardee's post-secondary education. For that reason, that's why I recommended the funds be managed through the foundation. It's been a long time working here. You should say, my gosh, that was back in June. So we've been working with Drummond and Woodson, our attorneys, and also in collaboration with the foundation to draft some documents for the board to consider this evening. And key factors in the agreement that you have before you. First of all, in terms of management of the fund through the foundation, due to the size of that fund, is going to serve our kids for generations if managed properly. And the foundation has outlined that clearly in a document for you. There is a clause in the agreement that RSU 5 has the ability to terminate the partnership and have the balance of funds returned to the district for distribution. There's also a strong voice from the high school for selection of the recipient of the scholarship, as the Freeport High School principal serves on the board. And the fourth thing that's important is that the foundation will provide a written report to the RSU 5 Board of Directors annually. So that in a nutshell is the history. That's what some of the salient points in the agreement. But we have with us tonight former board member, our board member, but current president of the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation, Jen Galetta. And I'm going to ask Jen if she can support me by telling the board a little bit about the Scholarship Foundation.
Hello. Funny being on this side. I don't think I was ever on this side before, but Jen Gulko also offered to come up and share. So if you want to come up and, offer any feedback. But the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation is actually a very young foundation. It just started in 2021, but it's grown immensely. I just became the president in January, so I do give a lot of credit to the past people, Fred Palmer and John Patterson, who many of you know, if you're around for the track and field, this was kind of their brainchild, and they worked with former Superintendent Becky Foley to get this going. The reason why I'm involved is because I think it's amazing. It's an amazing opportunity for our students, and just to give you a little bit of background, it was established to address the lack of post-secondary scholarship funds for Freeport High School students. The mission is to provide substantial financial assistance and community mentorship to FHS students who are seeking higher education. In addition to offering scholarships to students who are going to four-year institutions, we also have a technical and trade scholarship that we actually just amended to increase the amount and the duration of that scholarship. So just to let you know what the scholarships look like, every year since 2021, we've given a scholarship to a senior and a junior. The reason why we choose a junior is it gives them something to kind of look forward to. They know they have that scholarship, so when they're looking at schools and considering their post-secondary, they know they have that scholarship. There's actually a student in the school right now. He's a senior, and he was last year's recipient. And Jen can probably speak that she saw a difference in him after getting the scholarship, and his whole senior year was kind of had a little bit more, spring in his step. So we give for 4 years, $5,000 a year. So each student receives $20,000 over a 4-year period. That's for the two that go to a 4-year institution. The technical or trade scholarship is for 3 years, up to 3 years, and it's $4,000 a year. One of the very cool things about the technical trade scholarship is that it's not just limited to pay for schooling. We have the opportunity to adjust and kind of do a not one size fits all. It's a very detailed scholarship for each individual that could include tools or even transportation, books, you name it. Something that they might struggle with is what we want to help them do. So we have our first graduate this year who received the first scholarship as a senior. She's graduating from UNE this May as a nursing student. So very exciting, and we are extremely excited to possibly receive this money because it will create a situation where we can give 5 times the scholarships that we're currently giving. So that is amazing. For those of you that have ever paid for college or had to look at college for your student, I have 3 that I put through college. It's amazing for the community to have this. And one thing that I ask everyone leaves here tonight, whether this passes or not, is get the word out, because what we're finding is people don't know about this. And we need to make sure that every single student in Freeport High School knows that the scholarship's available, and their parents give them the little nudge to apply. So, Jen, if you have anything else to share?
I think, good evening, everybody. Jen Gulko from the high school. I think that something that is so unique about this organization is the element of providing a mentor, because there's very few scholarships that are available to do that. And this is a unique opportunity where, particularly for the student who's a junior, they're matched with a mentor right away. And so the student that she was speaking about is someone who has now been connected with their mentor since last spring. And so they're able to establish this relationship as they go through the college selection process, and continue. The mentorship goes beyond high school and while they're in college. That's the expectation. I thought that was the plug you were going to put out there. If anybody's interested in being a mentor, we're always looking for mentors. And so this is just, I've been so fortunate to be a part of this since the beginning with Fred and John and Dr. Becky Foley. Dr. Foley is also now a board member. And so it's people who are deeply committed to this, the three communities, the success of our students far beyond high school. And I think in the initial conversations about how we could manage this incredible donation to us, that element of mentorship was something that is a huge piece of that. I think the other thing that I have seen that in the selection process over the last 5 years, it's incredibly difficult because we are getting more and more students to apply, and we could make a case for every single one of them to receive this scholarship. That's the hardest part of our selection process, and increasing the funds would enable us to just increase the support that we're giving.
Questions for Jean, Jen, or Jen?
Gen G.
We're both Gen G.
Gen G, or Jean?
The email
not-
chain is very difficult. You can't just write Gen or Gen G.
Yeah, figured that out.
But isn't one of you two N's?
No.
You're both one N?
Yeah.
Oh. Questions? Yeah.
It's about this whole N situation in your names. It's not. What is the current idea that the funds that the 3.6 million from the trust would support effectively just expanding the existing structure that you have and sort of the same criteria, same usage? It's not sort of looking to establish a different scholarship with different criteria. It's really just to expand the two that you currently have. not sure who
No,
I'm
I
supposed to
think
address that to.
That's a great question, and the answer is to stick with what we're doing because it's a really great model. But I will say that one thing that has been discussed is actually increasing the amount of the scholarship. So right now, we do $5,000 for 4 years or $4,000 for 3 years. That may go up to, overall $25,000 if that's what the board decides is a good direction to go. But the model of the, large support over the whole time when someone's in school and the mentor, that's kind of the meat of the whole scholarship foundation.
Cool, awesome, thanks.
So that was going to be one of my questions too, was, is it different criteria? I feel like this gentleman who donated this was from the STEM field, but there was no restrictions that said they had to be STEM scholarships?
In the trust, where there's no direction in terms of the amount, or what kind of school, or what the criteria are.
Okay, great. So it's sort of wide open. So that was my question, is how and who makes that decision on what the scholarships look like going forward? Once we approve this tonight, does that become the foundation's decision, or is the board involved, or?
It's my understanding at this point that it would be the direction of the foundation, that we would go back and, like I mentioned to Colin, potentially increase. But we have, obviously, Jen Gulko is the person on the board right now, but there is also a requirement from another donator that we have the principal of Freeport High School on the board. So there will always be someone from the schools on the board. And any of you are welcome to if you want to join the board, we're looking for new board members as well. So did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it did. So then I guess it's a question for the board of the comfort level of basically handing off that decision-making to another party, right? Because the other option is we could make the decision and make the agreement subject to that, right? So we want to do $10,000 a year for 2 different scholarships instead of 4 or $5,000, bigger ones to be potentially more impactful to provide, because 20 is fantastic, but when it's, $100,000 to go, it's still a big nut to crack for a lot of students. So I'm not saying I have a strong feeling either way, but basically we are signing off that decision-making with this.
Thank you both so much. I think I'm comfortable with that, with allowing the foundation to do that with the funds. I think that they have the experience and they have the folks at the table that care deeply about the future of our students, as we do as well, but they, been at this and done this for a few years now, so I would be comfortable with that. And I just wanted to thank you both for your work on this.
Does your point, Jen, about the principal being a required member, does ours have that?
It does not. The Cushing does. And Cushing is because Cushing is part of the foundation, that's why the Freeport High School principal is always on the board. If that is something you like, that the board would like added specifically for Stetson, that's certainly something we could have done as well.
I think we should, just because, I mean, just like we have the ability to pull the funds if we wanted to, if there was a change in, I mean, that, I guess, is our relief valve if we were uncomfortable with how the foundation may be making decisions, like, we're going to do $200 scholarships instead, and we'd be like, oh, we don't feel like that's the spirit of it, we're going to take it back in-house. We have that ability in this agreement to do that. Not that I think we would need it, but I imagine Cushing probably does as well. So if they took it out and then the requirement for the principal no longer is a requirement on the foundation, I do think it's probably prudent to include it in our, I feel like it's important because I feel like that voice of directly from the high school in terms of like, what are the needs for our students? What are the students, seeing? Like, I think that's a really important piece of it. And I know we try to make these agreements agnostic to the people in the seats today, and make them sustainable over time. So I have no doubt about the people in the seats today, but you never know what happens over time. So I think it would be appropriate to include the principal if you guys all agree.
I just have a question about the criteria for the student. So any student in the high school could apply for the scholarship, right? That's what we're saying. And right now, just
Juniors and
that's what, yeah,
seniors.
junior and seniors, but any student, there's not a specific criteria of
Need-based?
need-based or anything like
There
that.
is, there is. That's in our description of financial need. That it's, in the description of the scholarship, that has been an element of it, of it's a student who is demonstrating commitment to their academics, commitment to the community, and financial need. And it's similar to some of the other scholarships that are out there that are that significant amount of money, but that is a stipulation in part of it. Anyone, however, can apply. We don't turn away an application, but it's certainly, there's financial information included in the application, and that is something that we take into consideration in the selection process, because the original idea of this whole foundation was, how do we make a significant difference in the life of a student who may not be able to pursue college at all without this level of support? Michelle, the only thing that I would say, I totally agree. I think the funds for Cushing will definitely run out before the Stetson funds do. I think it would just be something to consider that right now, and it's okay with me, because of the stipulation of the Cushing funds, saying that the principal needs to be a part. There's also a part that I am a signature on all of the financial decisions. I receive all of the statements from the bank, which is helpful. I'm probably one of the less knowledgeable about the investment percentages we should choose for that, but it's just something to know that that is something that the principal is taking on. It's not anything that is a hindrance or an exorbitant amount of work. It's just that everything that goes through the bank goes through the board, plus it also needs the principal's signature on everything.
Interesting. Okay. I guess I wasn't thinking that we needed to get that prescriptive in it. Or if we were going to get prescriptive on, that, maybe we could make it the principal or their designee. So you could just make Kelly do it.
Well, just also to add, I can say that as a board member, we would always want to have the principal or a designee on the board, because Jen has all the information, right? When we come to the table to make these decisions, she has a lot of information that board members don't have from just the application. So, and we also do have a couple former teachers on the board as well.
That's great.
Yeah, it's great. And just to add, if Danielle, to answer, just the criteria for the scholarship is intent to pursue postgraduate education, a Maine resident, a Freeport High School student, significant challenges to post-secondary education, exceptional financial need, a strong academic record, and community involvement.
I think this is fantastic. I think one piece I might just want to put in the mix is to have a relatively formal moment in the year when the board gets a presentation about what's been happening, because I feel like there's a few things in the district that are kind of in that category where it's like we've kind of designated things, or like people are doing things and then they say they're going to tell us what they're doing, but then we don't hear what they're doing. So I think just like having kind of a formal moment, and I think like having that not be on the principal's shoulders necessarily, it's not like the principal must report, but like just sort of, if that was a way to build that in, to basically just say like every June or every September or whatever the time of year would be, there's a presentation with some documents that we can look at.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea, because I think it gets the word out even more. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of this. My only hesitation is, I do think there, and maybe this is a discussion with the members of the foundation, I think there is a need for people who potentially don't have, extreme financial need. I mean, some of these high-level schools are so, relative to $80,000 a year to go to everyone has, most people have extreme financial need to go to a school like that. So is it relative to the school? Is it relative to their situation? Is there any discussion about that when you're having those? Or is it, here's the threshold, if you make more than this, you don't qualify?
We've had a lot of conversation about that, because I think we often see that it's families that fall kind of in the middle of the road that really can find that the college selection process and financial part of it is a challenge, because it's that their total family income is too high to be eligible for some things. I think the other piece of this process is that we have significant need in Freeport, and we are at the high school for all three communities. And I think that we also have had this element of the application that the student has significant barriers. And that is one of the things that we've looked a lot, where students have been very vulnerable in their applications to say, these are the challenges that I have, not just in paying for college, but in all of the different things that go with leaving high school and going to college. So I think both of those things are an important part of the process. The benefit I see of giving the board the decision-making power about how the criteria is set is
And foundation board, you mean?
The foundation
Yes.
board, yes, thank you, is the ability to be flexible. I've already seen in these 5 years that we've changed how we're giving particularly the technical scholarship support, where we gave it to a student, that student chose not to follow the training program they thought, and then they were able to use the funds for some of the things Jen was talking about, equipment that they needed, that they would not be able to pursue a job position without. And I think that we are able to meet as a board quickly, we communicate frequently, and we're able to make those revisions very quickly and say, we can make this change. And so I think it could be something, if we were the recipient of these funds, to talk about, do we expand the criteria? What does that look like? I think it would give the foundation board the ability to do that.
Great. And did your investment folks give you an idea of, how many scholarships you could do based on just, well, maybe not your investment return in the last few months, but on a typical year, like what, how much of the principal you would have to eat into? And
So we follow a 4%. So we take 4% from each fund each year to put towards scholarships.
so the number of scholarships may change based on what 4%
Oh,
is.
It will 100% change. It will change regardless of this money, because we did, we have had some other money donated. So you know, it's, everything is kept kind of separate, so it's 4% out of the different funds that come together to then offer all the scholarships. So nobody gets like a particular scholarship under a particular name. No one's gonna get the Stetson scholarship or the Cushing scholarship. It all comes together for all the students of Freeport High School. So it looks like, and I'm gonna be honest, this is a big undertaking, but it looks like it's going to multiply by about 5 times the scholarships. Or, like I said earlier, increase the amount of the scholarships, because as you said, Michelle, I mean, I've put 3 kids through college. Even $20,000 over 4 years doesn't make a humongous dent. I mean, it does, you know, it does.
It's
but
meaningful, for sure.
It's meaningful and it's significant, but it's definitely something that I think the board will look at, increasing the number of scholarships and the amount of the scholarships as well, which I think we could do both.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, I appreciate you walking us through the criteria, because I think that's important for both for this board, but also for our community to know, in terms of if we do make this agreement, that we are making it with a current understanding that those are the criteria, and like that is a decision, right? That's a decision to say it's a portion of our student body, a portion of our community that is being prioritized, and I don't think that's wrong, but I think it's just important for us to say that and to acknowledge that, and then maybe as part of this yearly feedback, you know, maybe we could all, as part of that, kind of just sort of hear an update on how you're thinking about the criteria, right? It's sort of like, you know, how like what kind of feedback also are you getting from applicants, or, you know, are you hearing that, because I think that would be an important part of our kind of like, I guess, a kind of yearly decision, sort of informal decision to kind of re-up, right? To be like, yeah, sounds good, keep going, like, let's keep the structure in place.
And I will just add that we are so fortunate with the number of scholarships that we have available for students. I think that's the plug that Phoebe could have put in there too, because the biggest challenge is getting kids to apply for them. But we have a significant number of scholarships that are not based on need. They might not be this amount, but I think that that's just something for the board to know, that there's a huge variety of the scholarships that kids are able to access. And so it's not that we don't have anything for students who are in a variety of, brackets of financial background.
Can I circle back for a minute about the principal serving on the board or the foundation? The question that, and we said that because of Cushing, the principal is a trustee, but if you go to item 12A, I think it's white sheet in your packet, page 2, it says the principal, and this is what we would be agreeing to, the principal of Freeport High School shall serve ex officio as a member of the board of directors of the foundation. The principal shall participate with the board of directors of the foundation in selecting scholarship awardees.
Okay, so it is in here.
So it is in there, in addition to Cushing, this spelled out here.
I couldn't remember if I saw it in here or not. I knew it was currently, but I should have just flipped the page, so, great. So then I don't even think we need to modify the proposal. Any other comments or questions?
This is really exciting, but it also just reminds me, Jen, a couple of years ago, we were talking from a policy committee perspective, we were talking about this question of scholarships and how students and families learn about the existence of the scholarship. And I think like it was a sort of suspended question then, and I think it's still sort of a suspended question of like, how do we as an RSU communicate that? And I think that, I don't know whether that's like a strategic plan kind of question, or whether, I don't know where it fits, but I just want to sort of like, I don't think it should remain a suspended question of how is it that the RSU communicates about the full range of scholarship opportunities that are available. And as you said, like, you know what they are, and the people that you're working with know what they are, and like that, those conversations happen. But I remember at that particular moment, like, we couldn't go to like a particular web page to see like here's what they all are, so we could kind of simply have that conversation. And I think we kind of agreed that that would be helpful to have.
We can now. So it's great. So we have, our guidance team has done a phenomenal job we have on the guidance website, which is linked to the district website and the high school website, there's just a scholarship page where everyone is linked. There's a description of the scholarship, there's the application there. So that's a digital way that lives on the website. It's sent to all families and to students electronically. Then we have in-person scholarship required meetings. The students aren't allowed to skip those, where they receive the information on paper and electronically. And then outside of the guidance office, there's a physical wall with paper copies of all of those scholarships. I think the ones that continue to evolve are ones that there's consistently brand new scholarships that come up. We sometimes receive that information. We don't always know how we get on mailing lists. One that we are super excited about is that we have the opportunity to give some of our seniors a brand new laptop. That's a new organization that's formed called Susie's Wagon. And so that has just come about in the last 2 years. And it's not, some of those are ones that we just nominate kids. They're not able to apply. But the ones that people are able to apply for are on the website, sent via email, are in that in-person meeting and on that paper wall now. We're really trying to, because I have a particular interest in this scholarship, we also visit classes, 12th grade and 11th grade English classes and advisories. They have paper copies, they have electronic copies, and then they meet with students at Region 10 as well. We still struggle. It's really hard to get students in the midst of everything that they're doing with college applications and their academic work and co-curricular activities to apply for them. And we just keep pushing them really, really hard about that.
I just want to say thank you, because that was a thing that we definitely raised as a question. So I just want to also acknowledge, thank you so much for jumping on that and doing that. That's fantastic.
I also have to add that Jen is like a cheerleader for this at the schools. I mean, she personally emails students about these and continues to like nudge them to finish their applications. Like she hops on school buses to talk to kids going to Region 10. Like she's amazing, and that's another reason why it's really important to have that connection with the principal of the high school.
I might have scared a student the other day because Jen and I were surprising her to let her know, except she thought she had a really serious meeting with me, and I kept a really straight face, and then we had flowers, and it was great.
Okay. Well, I guess it's better than it could have been, right? Or she was expecting anyway. Okay, so do I have a motion for acceptance of the agreement entitled Stetson Scholarship Fund Agreement between Regional School Unit Number 5 and the Freeport High School Scholarship Foundation be approved in the form presented to this meeting, that the superintendent be authorized to sign the agreement on behalf of the RSU, and that the secretary file an attested copy of said agreement with the minutes of this meeting? Cheyenne and Colin, thank you. Any other questions or? No? All those in favor? Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
All right. We're just in a philanthropic mood tonight. We're going to carry on. We're going to move to item 13B. New business. I will get the motion on the floor, and then we will have a discussion. Do we have a motion that the resolution entitled Resolution to Authorize, that's not the right one, B. Here we go, not A. I move that do we have a motion that the vote entitled Vote to Accept Gift of Basketball Court Repairs be approved in the form presented to this meeting, and that an attested copy of the vote be filed with the meeting minutes? Maura, thank you. Second. Kelly, great.
So I'd like to give a little context that over 30 years ago, Bob Smith led the Freeport Outdoor Recreation Group on a fundraising campaign to increase outdoor athletic opportunities for the community by building outdoor basketball courts at Freeport Middle School. and we all know what happens over 30 years. Sadly, Bob passed away in 2022, and in honor of Bob, some very dedicated community members embarked on a fundraising effort called Build It Back for Bob to raise community funds to resurface the Freeport Middle School basketball courts. The engineering for the project has been completed and vetted by our own facilities director, Glenn Reynolds. And the motion under consideration for the board this evening is to accept this most generous gift of basketball court repairs. I'm certainly in full motion of this, support of this motion and express my gratitude for the efforts of these dedicated community members, as this is clearly a project that is out of our current financial possibilities at that time. And I know one of the key members of Build It Back for Bob, Ally McCormick, is here this evening. I'd ask Ally if you'd like to say a few words to support this.
My name is Ally McCormick. I live in Freeport. I'm invited to the Professional Women's Association every year because of Ally McCormick. I haven't sent them my mugshot yet, but I haven't been to a school committee meeting in a long time, but in this climate that we're in, I just appreciate the service that all of you elected officials go through to become elected. Most of us sit in the background and either praise or critique you folks, and I appreciate what you do. So 30 years ago or so, Bob Smith and a couple of folks realized that there was no outdoor full-court basketball court in Freeport, Maine. We were from away from the Boston area where there were basketball courts all over the place, and no school ever got built unless there was a basketball court. One of the most amusing fundraisers back then, which we probably could not do today because of political correctness, is the Cow Chip Bingo fundraiser, which was a huge fundraiser where the middle school court is now. There was just grass, and it was gridded into 50 squares, and we sold the squares to community members, I think for $50 a piece, and we had a cow come up from Wolf Neck Farm and did his business or her business on a particular square. Anyway, the spirit of Bob Smith lives with all of us. I want to thank Jean, Michelle, Glenn, and oddly enough, Bob's spirit showed through Michelle because she knew Bob before we had the meeting. She didn't know that she knew him, but she now knows that she knows Bob Smith. We met with the facilities meeting maybe a year and a half ago, and I don't know which two school committee members was on that facility meeting, but we were pretty confident that we could do this. And I was a little frightened myself because I've never been involved in fundraising, but the spirit of Bob Smith, and I'm getting a little tingly now just even talking about him because we're in a gym. And so I, on behalf of the Friends of RSU5, Build It Back for Bob, are so happy to provide you with this money. And hopefully the court is going to be built by the summertime. And thank you very much. And again, thanks to Jean and Michelle for your help. All right. Any questions?
Questions for Ally? Just so folks know, the raised amount is sufficient to complete the renovation. So this is, they have done a 100% raise of this, which is absolutely incredible. Yeah, you guys were confident. I was like, wow, good luck. I mean, that was incredible. I will definitely say that. But I was, that first meeting, when we were like, geez, I don't know when this is going to fit into our capital plan, and you're like, all right, well, then we'll just raise it all, and you did. So thank you. Thank you to all of the group that was so involved in that, and all of the donors. He didn't tell you guys all the story, but my favorite story is, he said it, not me, a bunch of old men playing basketball, and some of the people saw them on the highway driving by and would pull off and be like, can I play with you guys?
Yeah, that was during COVID when the gym was closed. I also should mention two things. Fred Palmer and Mr.
John
Patterson are also donators to this particular facility, so that says a lot about them as citizens. And also, the initial funds are really the hardest to get. Once the ball gets rolling, people, Bow Street Market was very helpful. Bath Savings was very helpful, and if I can use the word beer at a school committee meeting, the Maine Beer Company was a great corporate citizen, in addition to all the Freeport Pownell, the Durham people. It's been a wonderful tribute to Bob Smith, so.
All right, any other questions?
So it was built 30 years ago?
Well, 34 years.
34 years ago?
Yep.
So that's kind of, are we thinking kind of would be our cycle for this one also?
When you have to mow a basketball court, it's a little bit sort of far gone. It's, you know,
I don't see what the problem is, but yeah, okay. So we're thinking like in 30 years, we'll just need to have part 2 of this.
There's a Bob Smith lurking somewhere
Right, exactly.
in the RSU5 community.
Yeah, so if you're watching tonight and your name is sort of Bob Smith, yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I just want to say, I also remember when Chris O'Neill talked to me about this the initial project, and also more in the phase of have it be kind of more of a matching thing with the district. And again, I'm just so impressed by it and thankful, and what a great way to honor his life and service to the community.
Thank you.
All right. Everybody good? Questions, comments? We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor? See, I told you no one would be opposed. Thank you, Ally. All right, Glenn, get on it. All right, so now we are back to our regularly scheduled agenda. Item 9, Administrator Reports, Finance. Kelly.
And I closed the lens. Do you want me to open it for you?
So included in your packet this evening are the expenditures for through March 31, 2025. Just a few highlights. We're about 93.4% expended and encumbered, and we are about 74% collected. It's kind of nice because we're about 75% through the year as of that time frame. We are monitoring the transportation article. That's the one that we may at finance at our next meeting at finance look to maybe transfer some funds. As you know, as part of the whole budget process, we talked about getting into a vehicle replacement plan, and so we've seen a little bit more repair money than we had expected. So we're hoping to address that this year with the movement from another article for this purpose, but then getting onto that replacement plan will help us maintain our fleet so that we don't have to hopefully spend quite so much in repairs. So that's the only area of concern that we're watching right now. We did, as I've mentioned previously, we've asked administrators to look at their spring spending and get that done before April breaks. So we're kind of letting the dust settle on that and getting those bills paid. And so we should have a better idea of where we'll be looking to land for the end of the year. We are on track for, I know we had discussed using some undesignated fund balance to help start up that project, the vehicle replacement projects, and we're moving funds into capital reserve from undesignated, and there are no concerns there as far as meeting the targets that we discussed for future years as well. So,
Questions for Kelly? Thank you. All right, so we will move on to Administrator Report 9B, update from Pownell Elementary School. Principal Holly Johnson.
So thank you for this opportunity and welcome to Pownell Elementary. Holly Johnson, principal. Pownell has lights and a disco ball, so that the school board is very comfortable here. Questions about why that is there? I think it's there year-round, and right now we are in rollerblading season, and it's the third time this year. And if you come in during PE, students are rollerblading with the lights off, the overhead lights, the color lights are on, and the music is on, and they're having a blast in here. So it's great. So thank you to Mr. T for that. So I'm going to share a little bit about, move it up. Yeah. I saw everyone else kind of hunched over too. That's great. Thank you. I'll share again this year about our whole school study. These spring meetings always fall shortly after we've had our whole school study, which is usually in mid-March or early April. And the month of March was really focused on students developing some new learning. And this year's study was on space. I do have the brochure that was given out the night of our whole school family share. And this year, we focused on space, and teachers started the work, actually, right as January rolls around, we start planning. With the subject that we knew we were going to focus on, teachers turned first to next-gen science standards to see which grades had actual science standards that aligned to that. Not all did, but 3 out of the 7 used those standards and developed the focus for the study. Grades 3, 4, and 5 actually did a lot of student inquiry, so students had some choice in what they studied or how they studied it, which was great. That was a little bit different this year than we've done in the past, and it paid off. So I'm going to focus on the learning, but I also want to focus on the teaching. It's not the teaching that the teachers did, but it's the teaching that transpired as students shared their learning. And as the brochure said, I called it Out of This World, Teaching and Learning. In each of the photos or videos that we're going to watch, it shows students demonstrating their projects, and other students are learning from them. And I heard at the end of, they do that during the day, and then in the evening the families come and they do the same thing. And it was really nice at the end of that first afternoon. I heard a kindergartner explained what they learned about, I got to remember the exact, anyways, it was just amazing for them to share, with, not being prompted, just wowed about some of the learning that they had discovered that day. So first grade, which is on your left, studied basically the sun in relationship to the moon and our Earth, and they built a nice model that they could use and demonstrate and show the orbit of the Earth, orbit of the moon, and talk about what happens in the relationship and describe what happens with an eclipse. It was really great. The photo on the right is kindergarten. They did the entire solar system, and suspended throughout the classroom were all the planets. And they had telescopes that you could observe and see the different elements, and then they had posters around that described all of their learning. Both of these are in pre-K. The student on the left is demonstrating what happens when trees are tapped, and the focus in pre-K was about weather and the impact it has on us and the different things it allows us to do. So they tapped a tree actually out behind the school, and then they built their own maple tree here. And then the student on the right is demonstrating evaporation, and they had all the academic vocabulary to use for all of it. It was great. And here on the left is a 5th grade student explaining their project to a 1st grader. And I had a video on the right, but it didn't want to stay, so tonight we're not going to watch the video. But it was actually one of the 1st graders demonstrating their model of the phases of the moon, and it was great. 3rd grade did a lot of inquiry study. Rovers had to be a part of that, and they built a few rover models, which was wonderful. And then they each had individual projects that had posters and or slideshows to go with it. We're going to get a little, the rovers were a lot of creativity. Kindergarten did a couple different projects. I showed their classroom earlier. These are some constellations that they made, and they were just amazing what they built. We did have Northern Stars Planetarium here in the gymnasium, and students were inspired to make models of the constellations and label them. This is the kindergarten room as well, so they worked together with the art studio. So each of the planets and the sun was modeled after the artwork of Alma Thomas, so they studied the artist and then built them in the art class, and then they were suspended in the classroom, and they're still there if you want to peek at them later. They're amazing. And I've got a couple slideshows from some fourth graders that hopefully work. I'm going to make this a little, I don't know if I can get that bigger.
What is Gravity by Declan Wilcox?
Can you hear that? Yeah.
What is gravity? The answer is gravity is an invisible force that pulls objects towards each other. Earth's gravity is what keeps you on the ground and what makes things fall. Albert Einstein described gravity as a curve in space that wraps around an object such as a star or a planet. You know how there are planets in space and they're floating? This is because there's less gravity in space. If you were to go into space, you would start floating around too, just like the planets, but on Earth you would just fall back down. Gravity, try it yourself. Throw a ball up in the air, and because there is gravity, it will come back down. Gravity, the end.
And this is another fourth grade slideshow. Most of it you're just going to have to read, but there's a video in the middle. So the reason I wanted to share a couple of the fourth grade slideshows, it was the same in third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade, but the collaboration that the students teaching each other about the technology, so not, it's a little bit of the sharing of the actual science information, but if one person didn't know how to add a video or do this, someone was ready, and it wasn't the teacher. They knew much more than the teachers. It was really great to see them really supporting each other in putting together projects. I need to. There. And this is the actual end of the slideshow, but I'm going to borrow it also. Any questions?
Thank you. That was really neat to see. I'm curious,
I just find it really neat how you have multi-age learning and so collaborative as you were talking about. Do you feel like that's really able to work here because of the small class size? Do you feel like are there bigger schools in the district that, like, what are lessons learned, I guess, that you could pass on? Do you feel like it's only because your small population that makes it work? Could this be replicated on a larger scale?
I think the smaller size makes it a little easier. I think it's doable. I mean, I think other, maybe the format that we have would definitely have to look different at a school, would have to be more hosted, like in a gymnasium, and maybe be just a couple grades, but the size makes it doable for students to share and interact on that platform. But even the month of learning, I mean, I know last year, third grade was studying a subject and pre-Ks was doing a similar thing, but they knew that, like, they were doing research about certain animals, so that they, joined up to share. So it really is just, everybody's really flexible, and the kids know each other, and they might know what their sibling is studying, so it really just all comes together we don't plan all of it. I'm going to let you know it happens, so it's great. So we do reflect at the end, so we'll meet to kind of debrief and talk about what were the great things that happened, what might we want to change or add for next year. And then we document all that, so as we jump into it next year, we're ready to plan and make it even better each year. So,
Other questions for Holly? Well, I just learned about solar wind, so thank you for that.
yeah. I didn't know.
Can we just
it-
watch that video for the rest of the night?
Yeah.
Just on loop?
Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, it was great.
It's very
to hear.
soothing, yeah.
All right.
Thank you. All right. Item 10, Board Comments Committee Reports. We'll start with Board Information Exchange and Agenda Requests. Oh, you have one too? Yeah.
I can go first, sure. I had sent the board a couple of weeks ago some information about a resolution related to immigration enforcement in schools. And so I was wondering if the policy committee could consider taking that up.
Is it a policy or is it?
That's a good question. Actually, I'm sorry, I said resolution. I do think it was a policy, a model policy that I think was very similar to the administrative procedures that Jean had said we already had in place, just formalizing them so that they can be more consistent across the district and maybe raise a little bit more awareness of them. And in particular, the reason I'm wondering if we want to make this a more formal policy, and I guess that would be up to the policy committee to discuss, right, whether that would make sense, is just because of some of the things that we've been seeing in the news about some of the tactics that are used that can be misleading. And so I wouldn't want our staff to be put in a position where they're being basically misled about what they need to do in a certain circumstance or situation. Just wanting everyone to be equipped with the knowledge that they need to protect our students in all situations. So I thought the board might, or the policy committee might want to consider making that more formal.
Yeah, and even if it's, I'll leave it to the policy committee to make the distinction between a policy and a procedure, but it could be a formalized procedure, like we do have formalized procedures that go along with our policies, right? Which, maybe that's where it fits. I don't know if it's formalized now, and if you looked it up, you'd see it, or if it's just sort of the practice. So, yep.
Yeah, I guess I'll say, as just a board member, I would be interested in us pursuing this, and as a policy committee member, or I guess also chair, I guess we would just need a direction from the board to look into that. And the documents that Mara was referring to are, it's a pair of policies that, it's a policy and a procedure that Kittery adopted that does just what you're saying, just outlines what the policy is and what the procedure would be to follow it. I think in terms of process, I think we could certainly discuss their we could certainly discuss their draft, or we could discuss the policies that Kittery has put in place. But I think the next step there would be sending that to our legal counsel, just to understand their perspective on that. Cynthia, you throw something at me if I'm saying the wrong thing. And I guess that would just also be my other question, is just what counsel Kittery got on that. But yeah, so we're ready to look at it.
Just a question, is it a brand-new policy, or is it a revision of an existing policy and procedure?
I believe it is a brand-new policy, and I will apologize, Colin, because I think I did have a conversation with, so the person on the Kittery School Board who shared it with me is also an MSBA board member, so that was where I became aware of it. That's how I became aware of it. So I do think I had a conversation with her about their council also being Drummond Woodsum, but I'd be happy to connect you if you want to find out further about that.
Okay, so I guess the question is the general consensus of the board that we'd like to direct the policy committee to undertake a review and potential drafting of a policy like this for us?
Yes.
General nodding is okay. No, it's okay. I'm looking for just more consensus, which I think the majority of folks are comfortable with,
Yeah, and I think also just to say, what we are agreeing to is we're not passing it, we're saying we will look at it and understand. And again, part of that would be also talking to, because Cynthia works with the committee the policy committee very closely. We would be beginning with understanding, all right, how does this relate to our existing, we're not going to call it a procedure, our existing protocols, how about that, another P word, the existing protocols that are currently in place at the school, and what the formalization of that process really means, and what that does for the school and what that does for the students. So yeah, again, it would not be committing to passing it, but committing to look into it and see whether it makes sense for our district.
Great. And just from expectation setting, from a timing perspective, we would expect probably something in the fall.
I think we could start it now. We could certainly look at it.
Glance at it?
We could certainly, let's see, we could certainly read it. How about I say that? We could certainly read it and also pass it along to Drummond Woodsum just to start that process. Okay. But I think we have 2 more meetings. Is that accurate? 2 more. The last meeting is the review. That's the June meeting, right? Right. So we have a meeting on Friday, which is our last working meeting, and then our June meeting as a policy committee is a review of the entire year, but also a review of what is upcoming. So we would not be in a position to present anything to the board before the end of the year. Just structurally, we would not be able to do that.
End of the school year.
Sorry, the end of the school year. Yes, thank you.
That's what I figured. I wasn't pushing you to do anything quicker. I just was trying to set some expectations. Okay? Thank you for bringing that up. Now I'm looking at you, Colin. Did you have a?
Yeah, I have a
Did you have a comment?
So, as the public may not be aware, the board is only allowed to discuss things here together as a board. We're not allowed to have private conversations as a board via email. So when board members send questions about certain things, they sometimes then get kicked here, because this is the place where we should be having this conversation. So
We'll
here
call it
is
general nudging, not a kicking.
it was a nudge. So here was the email that I sent. Dear Michelle, how are you? How are things with your family? Mine is, we are well, thank you. Is it possible to get a very basic 411 on what the plans for the tennis and track and field reserve funds are? Is each being built up toward a particular project, replacement or renovation, on a particular timeline? When were these funds created, and are we on track to meet the goals on the original timeline established? Or have we had to accelerate, decelerate due to other factors? I'm also curious whether those projects are needed for student safety, parenthetical, versus generally having nice or improved facilities, which is also good, but a little different in terms of needs, and parenthetical. Thanks in advance. Take care. Enjoy the spring. Love, Colin.
XOXO. Okay, so thank you for the question, Colin. So there's really two pieces. We have two reserve accounts that are set up. And one of those was set up in 2019, which I believe was the year after the track and field was completed. So one of the concerns about the track and field project was that the life of the turf and the life of the track surface, they're expensive to replace. And the concern was that if left to their own devices, it could end up with a very large bill 10 to 15 years down the road when those things need to be replaced, either in this, around the same time or within a few years of each other. So one of the things that was done with the creation of the track and field project was the creation of a reserve account to start putting money aside to save for that 10 to 15 year cost down the road. So we have historically put $35,000 into that account every year. I believe in 2020 we paused all transfers, I guess, to those accounts, just given the economic climate that year. We just kind of, anything that wasn't absolutely essential, we just put it on pause for that year. But I believe we reinstituted it the following year and have done that since its creation or somewhere around there. So after next year's edition, that'll be about $280,000 in that account. So that's kind of the, there is a purpose for that. It was designated when it was created for the future track and field maintenance, repairs, and replacement. That was on the May 2019 annual budget meeting warrant. So that's the track and field. The tennis is more recent. It's a few years newer. That one was created in July of 2021. That one, when it was created, apparently did not have a specific purpose tied to it, other than the obvious, it's called the tennis reserve account. But the creation of it was a similar idea of replacement of the tennis courts. So the tennis courts every, 3 to 4 years, I think Glenn left, but we have kind of resealed them, but they really need to be similar to the basketball courts, dug up and redone. But it's an expensive project. So last year, we got an update on the pricing of the project, and it came in just about $300,000 to redo the full 3 courts that are there right now at the Freeport High School. After next year's 25-26 edition, we'll have $190,000 in that account. The thought was, is this something we maybe want to put to the facilities committee based on, the interest that the basketball courts got and their success in that fundraising? Maybe there is a fundraising campaign that can be coupled with the money that we have, at this rate, it's probably a few more years, but before we have the funds available to do the full renovation of the tennis courts. But, partnering with a fundraising campaign, maybe we can get them done sooner. Right now, that one does not have a purpose established, so we probably want to do that, and probably can't do it this year because the warrants are already done, but on next year's warrant, we may want to have one on there that basically says what the purpose of that reserve account is, and that the board could expend it, for that purpose in the future, so that we are ready to move if there is a donor or we come into some, Phoebe goes D1 and has a Nike scholarship, and so. Yeah, it's totally expecting, yeah.
Super, that's really nice. Thank you for responding to my letter.
My best regards, Michelle.
That's super helpful. I think I guess it's sort of regarding both of them. I guess I'm just curious, I guess it's the funds, but it's more, I guess, the facilities or sort of management of it. What is who determines when the facilities are no longer safe to play on? In other words, you said we have been resealing the tennis courts. Is that kind of the way, and by sealing them, then some tennis person comes and says these tennis courts are sealed and they look good and we can play on them,
Right.
and have other schools come and
Right,
play on
so it's
them?
more than just looking pretty.
Right, yeah.
And I think, it's important to know that our grounds folks look at that stuff, including playground equipment, all the time. And I know the tennis courts, for example, where the net is, I know where the pole is in there, like they reset that every year. We would not have kids on it if it was not safe to play. I'll say that, and we have kids playing right now. Definitely, we know that there's going to need to be some pretty, not just prettying it up, but some significant work on there. But our grounds people take that seriously, and they inspect the stuff. They're looking at, our turf field is meticulously maintained, as is the track, to make sure no one's injured while any student athletes, as well as our tennis courts. Are there other schools that have better tennis courts? Absolutely. They are, that are more updated. Do we need to look at updating ours in the fairly near future? Yeah, we probably should, but at this point, they are safe to play on because we wouldn't be on them.
Okay. So I think just in terms of the, I guess, what we'd be looking at is probably another 5 years before we'd be in a position to, with our current installment plan, to be replacing them. Is that accurate? I mean, with that, because we have 190,000 and it's 300,000.
Right, so another 3 years.
Another 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, that assumes no fundraising, and it also assumes, that the reason that the $300,000 didn't come out in the facilities plan is just in terms of prioritization.
Yeah, definitely.
Things like, septic systems and failing boilers and those sort of things took precedence to the courts, frankly. Same with the basketball courts, right? We would love to have resealed those too, but it just didn't rise to the level of sort of bumping something else off the facilities list. So, if the facilities plan got to a point where, there maybe a portion of the annual spend goes to that, to fill the last gap, right? So maybe in the last year, we transfer some, and then we also move some from the budget. So that's another way to do it. But, yeah.
Yeah, Colin, this has been a discussion that I've been having with some of the tennis players also, and with some of the people in the tennis world that know about our court situation and are also as equally dismayed. And they did make me aware, and I looked into, there's a USTA grant also available that we can apply for that will probably net us another $25,000 to $35,000 that would go toward that fund and could potentially get us there a little bit faster.
Yeah, it's a tougher one, right? Because the turf is used by so many sports, right? So you've got the football and the soccer and the lacrosse and the field hockey boosters, and their fundraising. I mean, obviously, it's a much bigger dollar amount that they raised for that. But thank you, Fred and John, for spearheading that. But it's tougher for tennis because it's pretty much only tennis players use the tennis courts. So it's a smaller, community, but the fact that there are grants and, the people who are in that community are also very committed to it. So, I wouldn't say that we couldn't consider it until, the full 300 was raised, or, we also don't know what the price would be in a couple of years, right? That might change a little bit too. So, I guess I would just say that the board, if the board is interested or wants the facilities committee to, look at, hey, should we try to move this up in the queue if possible? We can make sure that's part of the discussion.
We did actually I had a discussion via email with Glenn and Jean, and we did decide to put that on our next facilities and operations agenda. So that is something we'll be discussing at our next meeting.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And again, I think just as long as I think where I'm coming from is just the safety, is primarily the safety perspective. And so just as long as that is the primary factor that is being considered for that, then it seems like we're balancing things correctly. And yeah, I haven't seen what the impact of the tariffs are on the import of tennis courts, but it'll be interesting to look into that after this meeting.
Yeah.
I definitely hear you, Colin, because I am a tennis player and I do play on those courts, and I don't know who you're talking to, but I do agree that they're not super safe. So I hope that we can be considering that when we talk about this soon.
Yeah, I'll just echo that it would be good to do what we can to prioritize it and speed up the timeline, just because I know the board has been talking about it for as long as I've been on the board. So like at least 6 years.
Been two ceilings in that time frame.
Right. So the price continues to go up too. I'm sure I remember when we were talking about it being obviously in the 200s as we wait longer, but I know we'll get more longevity out of it. But just hearing from folks about how, like, if the ball bounces, maybe you're not sure it's going to go the way you think it is because of how the structure of the court, and that there are puddles that form on the court. So anyway, I just will repeat what I've heard, which is that, some student athletes have very nice facilities and some have not had as much of a priority. And so it would be nice for us to update those, and just like putting a call out to the community that it would be lovely if some fundraising could happen, and in addition to the board trying to prioritize it, to get this moving sooner so it could happen sooner for our tennis players.
Yeah. Agreed.
Just so you're aware, there are parents that are interested in this effort and have offered to make it happen if we as a board can give them some more information. So
I will just say that I think while I would be totally on board for us developing an alternative tennis game that sort of relies on that kind of like confusing kind of like ricochet. My father, when I was growing up, went to the dump in Waldoboro, Maine, and brought home a pool table, like a billiard table, that didn't have legs on it, and it wasn't slate. It was wood, and so whenever we had friends over, we had to teach them how to like play it. Like you had to like little rises you had to go over, but I don't think that's probably appropriate for our school to have such a facility.
It's home field advantage.
Well, that's exactly. How do you think I'm paying for?
Anyone who's ever
kids'
played on Greeley's soccer field knows that that's their home field advantage. Like there's literally holes in the middle of the field. Talk about dangerous.
yeah, no, honestly, it's not so much the ricochet of the balls that's the biggest concern. It's the fact that the surface is so uneven in parts that you could literally trip on the bumps in the surface as you're running around the court.
But I do want to say for the public, that what's really super important to me is I don't want people walking away thinking that we're going to have a catastrophic injury right now because of our courts, because they are inspected. Jason Chisholm inspects those, monitors them, and we would not have kids out there playing if it wasn't safe to do so. And I'm not saying we don't need to do the work. I'm not saying we don't need to maybe expedite this, but I just, it's worrisome. I want the public to know that our kids are safe there.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to just bring up for information exchange for folks, I thought this might be a good spot to talk a little bit about the superintendent search. In your packets, you have an item called 10A, which has a couple of documents. The first page is a draft timeline for the search. So hopefully members of the community, parents, staff, have received we'll start with the position was posted last week. So we're working with MSMA on that, and they posted the position on the 25th. On Monday, a letter went out to the community members seeking interested parties to be on the initial superintendent search committee. So that'll be made up of a few board members, staff members, students, parents, community members, administrators. Ideally, no more than 11, because that's how many we can fit in the conference room. And that's the group that will craft the questions, review the applications, packages that come in from interested applicants, select the first round of interviewees, and then perform that first round of interviews. And then that committee's work generally ends with moving forward one or two, usually at least two candidates for the board's final interview. The full board is responsible for that final interview, and then the hire of the superintendent. So as you can see here, this is the timeline. So the 28th, that letter went out, so hopefully we will get members interested in serving on that committee. The key dates for that committee, if folks are watching from home, there is a virtual mandatory training on for HR purposes on what the hiring process looks like, legal obligations, things like that. It's May 28th at 5 p.m. It'll be virtual, so you can do it from your phone. You'll be asked to sign a confidentiality agreement, and then between the 3rd and the 6th of June, the folks on that committee will have access to an online portal to review the application packages from all of the applicants, and then the first interviews will be on June 10th. So depending on the time frame and how many interviews there are, it's usually, early afternoon through early evening for those interviews. And then they make the recommendation to move forward the candidates to the board. So if we have, we would look for a few members of this board if folks are interested in that. I would ask that you let us know so that you can be included on that search committee. And for folks at home or that are watching, we would love to hear from you as well if you can be on that committee. I believe you have to have your letter of interest in to Ginny by next Friday, the 9th of May, with who you are, what sort of stakeholder groups you may represent, whether you're a parent or a staff member or whatever you may be, a student, and then kind of what you bring to the committee. And then we'll let folks know that following week who's been selected for the search committee. So that's one piece of it, is the search committee. The other piece of the process that I wanted to talk about tonight was, this year, given the timeline, I've heard some concern about the timeline for a superintendent search starting in April, which is later than you would typically undertake it, but based on this timeline, we would look to hire a candidate by the end of June. Most administrators have 60-day clauses that they have to give their notice. So the new hire could be in place by the start of school in September. So there's not a lot of extra room in the process, but there is enough time to get this done. And we are very hopeful that we will attract a really solid candidate pool and be able to select a great replacement for Jean to lead the district going forward. The other thing that we would like to do, in addition, in terms of opportunities for people to participate in the process, separate from the hiring committee, we're also planning to send out a community survey. So last time we did listening sessions with different stakeholders. That takes a fair amount of time and coordination. We were a little concerned about the tight time frame to get those done. We still have all the information from those. They were 3 years ago. I don't think, major shifts have happened in our district in terms of where, what are you looking for in a leader? But we did want to provide another option in place of those listening sessions. So it's going to be a survey. So the document behind the timeline in your packets is the draft of that survey. So I would just ask folks to take a quick scan of that document, because our goal is to send it out. Our goal is to send it out probably end of day tomorrow and open the survey on Friday to give people, 2 full weeks, maybe more than 2 weeks. How many weeks is it? The 19th is when they're looking to close that survey. So 2.5 weeks or so to fill out that survey. So in order to do that, if we had any adjustments we wanted them to make to this survey, we would basically need to let them know tomorrow morning. So I will stop talking so people can take a quick glance. It's only a few questions. Yes.
So on there, like, right away, it says, who you're representing. So are we sending this to the students, all the students throughout are we going to hit the high school students? What are we doing there?
I believe the plan was probably high school. I don't know, we can talk to Eileen if they get any luck sending it to middle school kids. I'm not sure. You never know.
Was more wondering if it was going to be an age thing, right? So if you had to be 18, that's kind of what I was looking for.
Yeah. Cheyenne.
Now, the questions that are asked on this survey, is that going to determine the questions that are asked during the interview for this new superintendent?
So what it does, and how we use the information from the listening sessions last time, is they basically compile all the feedback we're getting, and if they're seeing common themes, like everyone's really interested in, can they grow cucumbers, whatever, then we might ask a question about that, right? Like we might draft a question about that. Is everyone looking for a change agent, right? That's one of the terms that's on there. If there's a lot of interest in that, then yeah, that might drive one of the questions we ask during the interview process. Whether it's the first interview or even the second interview with the board. So it just helps inform. Yeah.
I just had a question about the ranking. Do then folks have to order them? They have to put them 1 to 8? Because I was thinking, well, I would want to put how important, like somewhat important, not important, very important.
Oh, I guess I just thought, I didn't think.
Right, I was thinking 1 is how, well, that's a good point, Jean. 1 to 8, which one is the most? Which one is the least? But then I was also thinking more of on a scale of 10 of how important, or
These
a 5,
are all important.
Or 5, how important is it to you? But this is ranking, so I didn't.
Yeah,
I
didn't even make that distinction, so.
It seems like kind of we're actually asking with this question is the word change would be which is more important and which is less important, because it's
Least sounds not.
So yeah, we are, but it's, yes, I agree. I think it would be maddening. I would stop doing this if I had to try to figure out, wait, where do I put the thing? Which 5 is here? And then that would just be
It is
crazy
an
to me.
interesting, the way they set that one up. And then the next one is different, right? You pick 5.
I guess I'm just wondering if it could be more of a scale and you can put a 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 of how important this is to you. I mean, I guess you might end up with people putting them all as 5, but.
Right.
And I guess you want to come away with some validity in the survey and good information when you come away with it. I'm just thinking if I had to rank them 1 to 8, that, I don't know if that's as meaningful.
Maybe you would get more, maybe it would force the thought process of.
It's also,
Yeah.
I worry that people get really confused with this stuff in terms of thinking 1 is the most or the least. So I think it's a lot better to have it as, instead of a number, most important, least important. Because even though the instructions say that happens all the time in surveys, I feel like. And they
Yeah,
mix the
or
numbers
at
up.
least write it above the numbers too, so that people
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
one, and have it say most important. I mean, I don't know if there's any limitations in the structure, like the technology behind the survey, if they can do that or not, but we can certainly bring that up to them around to limit potential confusion.
Just quick thing, going back to Cheyenne's question about the way we use the feedback and your answer. My recollection from serving on the last board, and just to be clear, we did hire Jean because she grows really good cucumbers. That was the reason. She lied about that. But she's turned out great anyway. But my recollection is that we have to ask the same questions of each candidate, or we have like a slate of questions that we ask. And so to that point, like, I think I remember that being an important part of the process of saying, yes, this is, we take this information and then think about, okay, what are we gonna ask everybody about that? Am I remembering that correctly?
That is correct, yes. Yeah, because you don't want to create bias by, softball questions to one candidate and really, challenging thesis, PhD questions to another. So, and we'll go over all that in the training. So, just so folks know, everyone involved in the hiring process has to participate in the training. But we are going to ask that on the 28th, the full board doesn't all do it on that day, just because that becomes a board meeting, and then we have to notice it, and then we can't do it virtually. Because we're all convened and we're discussing board business, which is the hiring of the superintendent. So that was the read that we took of if we did that. So 5 people can do it that night. So my suggestion would be for the members of the board that are interested in being on the search committee, that you would participate on that virtual night on the 28th. And then they will record it, so the remainder of the board members could watch it after that, if that makes sense, at their leisure. Okay. Any other feedback on the survey? Thoughts on the timeline?
I just have a quick thought. So the 25th of June is going to be an extra meeting.
Yes.
It's going to be after the end of the school year. Is there any concern that we will have enough people here in town to make this meeting happen? I know for one-
Of us, you mean?
Yes.
I mean, it only needs to be a quorum, but ideally,
I'm just wondering if anybody has checked that we're going to have enough.
no, we haven't checked. This is the check, so if you could check your calendars. The June 25th would be an extra meeting for the board. We'll have 2 extra meetings beyond what we currently have scheduled. We'll have one on the 18th, and that would be for the second interviews. So that would be the finalists that were moved to the board for consideration. So the board would meet on the 18th. I keep saying 17th because their original suggestion was the 17th, but that's the last day of school, and we have other conflicts that night. So, and I thought keeping it on Wednesdays might help everybody for consistency's sake that we show up on Wednesdays. So the 18th, and then the 25th would be the meeting to hire. Yeah, it doesn't have to be 6:30. We can set the time. Generally, that meeting would literally have one item on the agenda, which would be to hire the superintendent. You out of town?
I might be at a orientation for school.
For college?
So
Going
we'll
back
see.
to school?
Yes, I'm going back too. It's great.
Going to space camp, 3rd time.
3rd time.
So yeah, just I guess my understanding would be the 25th, we will already have chosen So that is really functionally, we just need to have quorum.
Yes.
Because we have chosen it before, so the
18th
the
is
more
really
important meeting
the more
in terms
important
of everybody being present to be able to actively participate is the 18th.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the process previously, so as Colin said, we won't be discussing who we're hiring that night,
Well, the meeting on the 18th will be an executive session. That will be the interviews.
the interviews with the candidates.
Yeah.
So then we will discuss them immediately after?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and make a decision that day, and
Yeah.
then, okay.
That would be the plan, yeah. So we would do similar to what we did last time, we would do the reference checks between the first interview and the second interview. So in addition to the second interviews, we would also have a discussion of the reference checks and that whole process. And all of that would be in executive session.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention I will be out of town and probably unavailable on the 25th.
Okay. So maybe Kelly, maybe Danielle. Okay. Very exciting. Okay. Yeah, so if other folks could check their calendars, they don't have to do it right this minute, but if you have a conflict, please let us know, just so we can plan accordingly. Make sure we do have a quorum. All right. Everyone feel satisfied with the process to date? Other questions? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Will the board get the materials in advance of the meeting?
So I think what they will do is they will open up the portal for the specific finalists to the board. So like if they send 2 finalists forward, the same way the committee has access through the portal, you'll have access to go in and review in advance. But I'll confirm that. All right. I think that was the most robust board information exchange we've ever had. Facilities and Operations Committee.
So the Facilities and Operations Committee met on April 9th, and we reviewed a couple of projects that we'll be completing soon. We had proposals submitted for the Pownell Elementary School septic system. We received 6 proposals from different companies and used the following criteria to select the best value for RSU5. Number 1, the proposer experience and customer service history. Number 2, the availability of installations and completion date deadline. And number 3, durability, warranty, and ease of maintenance. And based on those criteria, RSU5 chose COP Excavating to complete the Pownell Elementary School septic system, which we hope to do very soon. Secondly, and related, was the Pownell Elementary School playground equipment proposal. We got proposals from Maine Recreation and Design and Ben Schaefer Recreation, and used similar criteria to select the contractor for that project, which ended up being Maine Recreation and Design. Next, we discussed the energy audit phase 1 project update. Our director, Glenn Reynolds, informed the committee that the projects have not gone out to bid yet, so he has met with EMC to develop a tentative schedule for the projects that's least intrusive to our summer programming. We have quite a few programs that are still in the buildings over the summertime, and we want to try to minimize disruption to those programs. So once we select the vendors, the schedule will be finalized, and some of the projects on that phase are the Freeport High School boiler replacement, LED lighting upgrades, and fire panels and device upgrades.
Maura.
Thank you, Kelly. Just for the sake of the community, could you tell us regarding the septic proposals, the ones that were lower, because it looks like we accepted the one that was about in the middle. Were there, and I see the criteria that you used, but were there specific things that caused those to be eliminated? Like you said, they couldn't be done over the summer or something when we need it done?
Yeah, no, it was really, it really came down to those three criteria, and we weighted those three criteria according to how much importance we gave to each one of them. So the most important factor that would determine which one was chosen was their experience and their customer service history. So if we got a lower bid, for example, but that particular contractor didn't have a great customer service history, then we might give them a little ding for that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so where is the price factored in then?
I can jump in on that. So we actually looked at each proposal and looked at each of those items, and they were scored. So if you get to the point where there's a tie for the score, for all those, everything else is equal, then we would look at that price at that time. Because it's not always in a request for a proposal, it's not always about the lowest dollar figures, it's those other things too, including like the reference checks and so forth. So everybody was scored the same way, and in any time we saw a tie in that score, then we would look at the lower bid.
Thank you. Yeah, I just was wondering because the amounts were significantly different, how that was taken into account. So thank you, Jean, for explaining that.
All right. Beth isn't here. You want me to do it?
Yes.
Okay, since you just spoke. Okay, so I will do the Finance Committee. This is from the meeting on Wednesday, March 26th. And the first thing on our agenda was the cost-sharing review. So what we did, based on the discussion last year and the agreement that the Finance Committee would sort of revisit the updated information on the rationale or the methodology we agreed on as a board last year to make sure there weren't any major deviations. So Director Wentworth provided the updated version of those calculations with the current information. There was the committee members felt that the percentages remained consistent with the prior years, and as such, we're not making any recommendations for changes to be made at this time, and we will continue to revisit it on an annual basis. We had an audit update. At that point, we had the draft of the audit. Spoiler alert, tonight the final audit was presented to the Finance Committee, so that will get filed with the state, and so that is completed. The auditor, Marge, came and gave her annual update to the Finance Committee this evening to discuss that. And then other items that was discussed was at the public comment we had received in Durham from the community member around the alternative health insurance plans and ways that the district might have some savings from that. And our finance director is going to be seeking out some information around other districts that may have explored alternative health offerings, and that I imagine will sort of stay on the radar of the Finance Committee around whether the board is interested in seeking out potential bids for alternative insurance for our staff. We do have contractual obligations for the level of program we offer, but we actually got. A gentleman attended this evening as well, the Finance Committee, and gave us some additional information around other potential steps we might take. So stay tuned for more on that.
So no extension on the audit? No additional time needed?
Well, they were due on December 31st, so it was already extended.
It was extended,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, well, I was going to commend you on your persistence, but thank you Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, everyone who worked so hard on that. 'Cause
Yeah, it's a little earlier than last year.
it did seem earlier to me than I remembered it, so thank you for all your hard work.
Yeah. Yeah, and we did actually have a conversation about that. You know, I think the CPA firms are feeling the same thing a lot of employers are. They're just not a lot of staff, and they're obviously very complex audits to be done, and despite my best efforts to hurry them along, there's only so much we can do. So I think they are well aware of our goal of getting it done by December 31st. So, and they have already scheduled their time with Kelly for next year's audit to start. So, any other questions on finance? All right, so we will move on to policy.
Thanks. So the policy committee met via Zoom on April 4th, and we looked at two policies. We looked at policy IKC, which is transcripts and academic achievement, and just so folks know, that wasn't on our regular review. That was because that was something that the school had been working on, and so we were making use of information and work that had been gathered by the staff. And then we also, and we're bringing that before you for first read tonight. And then we also reviewed GRCD, private tutoring for pay. That was a part of our regular review process, and there were no revisions to that, so we're not bringing it before you. We have our next meeting on May 2nd at 8:45 via Zoom. The community is welcome to attend. As I always say at the beginning of the meeting, we love having the community join us, and we just want to make sure that any members of the public who attend know that they will not be able to contribute or speak at the policy meeting, because it's a really big party. Danielle always brings virtual donuts because she works in healthcare and she knows they're good for us. Just so that if any members of the public have feedback or opinions about what we're discussing in the policy committee, we encourage them either to come to a full board meeting so the entire board can hear that, or to email the full board so we have that information. And in a moment, we will talk about the things, but if you have questions about the virtual donuts or anything like that. Oh, I also just want to say thank you to Candy DeSipkis, who's a long standing member of the policy committee and board member, and we brought her back into the process when she came back in that sort of emergency capacity, and just want to thank Candy for all of the work and insight that she brought to that. She'll be missed.
Okay. I was wondering if I missed a board meeting, since it says you're bringing it to the board on April 26th. I was like, was there one this weekend? It says the following policy will be brought to the first read on April 26th.
Just, actually, as we heard in the presentation by the principal of the Pownell Community School, kind of time and space kind of bend.
Continuum,
it's
yeah.
sort of like, it's all sort of like relative.
Yeah,
Man.
got it. All right. All right, you want me to get the motion on the floor for these guys before you? All right. So do I have a motion for consideration and approval for the first read for the following policies? IJOC, school volunteers, IKC, transcripts and academic achievement, and JLF, reporting child abuse and neglect. Danielle and Cheyenne, thank you.
Great, so we're bringing three policies before you for first read. I believe all of these were triggered by policy change. Isn't that correct, Cynthia? No, it's not correct. Thank you. No, I like to sort of, it can only go up from there. But it wasn't the, that was not true of IKC. IKC was not part of regular review. All right, it's a combination. Cynthia's right. I'm wrong. The first one is IJOC, which is school volunteers. The only changes that were made there, or striking out the final two paragraphs, because we just needed the policy to reflect our actual practice, which is that the school reaches out and acknowledges volunteers on a more or less in-the-moment basis. And there were no other questions that came up in our discussion of that one. Any questions or things about that one?
Did we get I feel like we got an email from a community member, it was probably several months back now, about, and I don't know if it was tied to the reporters, the other policy we're going to talk about whether volunteers are mandated reporters or not. Was that just, was that related to your review of this policy at all, or was there a discussion about that? I was just...
Yeah, no, I'm remembering what my recollection of that was that we received that email, and forgive me if I'm getting the timeline wrong, we received that email after this meeting, but we may have received it before, but my recollection of of how we engaged that, of how we thought about that, was that our understanding is that it is not that they are mandatory reporters at I guess it would be from a legal standpoint, but the school still believes it is important for anyone that is coming into our schools to be in a position to be able to provide feedback on what they are observing. Is that a fair way of saying that, Jean?
And there's also an addition to the policy you'll be looking at this evening that says any volunteer who has reason to suspect that a child has been or is likely to be abused or neglected is also expected to make a report to the building administration.
Yeah,
that's added in.
But that is not also, that's not a state mandate, though.
It's not a what?
That's not a state mandate. That's
an addition that we made.
But it's a district decision that has been recommended. Yeah.
Also expected, not shall. May, not shall. Should, not shall.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to that. I mean, I think my brain goes on this to we should expect our community members to be good citizens, and if they think something untoward is happening, they should speak up.
Okay. I think the question was if we are basically asking them to be mandated
Yeah,
reporters,
if they've not been trained.
Should
Yeah.
we provide training?
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting question, and I think I guess the way we don't think we talked about it directly in terms of that training, that question of training, but I think that I'm going back to my just brain archive. I think the way that I was thinking it through was that the notification of the school or if someone observes something and then they bring it to the attention of the principal, that does not in and of itself. For example, I lived in Thailand, and there's a king, and there are lèse majesté laws, and anybody at any time can go to the police and say, Kelly said something mean about the king, and without any further evidence, Kelly can be thrown in jail for 30 years. That is not how things work here. So I think if a volunteer went to Jean and said, I saw something that was concerning, then that puts it in Jean's court. It's no longer part of the individual citizen's responsibility to do anything further. It just allows Jean to have that information and then make a determination of how she wants to proceed, which I guess in my judgment is appropriate.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the way it's written, though, is it doesn't stop at the report to the administrator. It may also report directly to DHHS and the district attorney if required.
I mean, again, I guess I'll be speaking as a I was speaking as an individual board member, not as the chair. I just have no problem with that. I believe that if any if any adult has concerns about the welfare of a child, I believe that they should speak to someone with the responsibility to formally pursue an understanding of what is of what is happening. But again, I'm saying that as an individual board member, not as the chair.
Yeah. Do we provide training for staff about is it something that we could, even if like, I don't know, maybe it's too simplified to be like a page or I mean, because I know that to be a volunteer, you have to sign up, you have to get cleared. Like, could there be something in there that just provides a little bit of guidance so people feel equipped or?
In this scene, Cynthia is coming to the microphone to perhaps tell us some information about that topic.
Good evening. I'm going to answer the first part. You said, do we provide the training? Every 4 years, it's required mandatory training, and we keep really good records of that.
To staff.
To staff, right? So anybody who gets a paycheck, and even coaches are supposed to get that.
What about us?
And so, you're invited to come. We haven't extended that. You do get a paycheck because you get, what, $25? Yeah. So.
Big bucks.
Yeah.
Big bucks, Cynthia.
You know, and I think just the spirit of what you're talking about, every adult in this community can be should be considered a mandated reporter. If you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Because then it goes into the hand. So we have a designated agent, right? So we do that on purpose because there's a conversation that happens with, like, the principal is usually the designated agent in the building, and that conversation happens with the staff member. And then there's forms to make sure it did get reported, and then that form goes back. And then if it's reported, if they don't know that it was reported within 24 hours, then they have to call themselves, right? So there's all these stopgaps that are put in there to protect kids from falling through the cracks, right? And so I think they included the volunteers for that same reason, right? And so they may or may not know what to do. They may share it with someone and they say, you need to go talk to the principal, right? And we want them to do that. They can also, anybody can actually also report on their own, but we require our staff to report it to the designated agent regardless. Like, they've got to do that. That's part of our policy and it's part of the process, the law. So I hope I didn't, you look a little more confused than
No,
more I'm talking. Okay.
No.
So it's really to, like, catch anything. I mean, and I remember when it was said at that board meeting, and I'm like, he's just not, it was not interpreted in the way that the intent was. The intent was just to make sure there may be somebody that, maybe that's the only person that saw or overheard something. And so they go and they say, this is what I overheard. Then the agent, which this is the principal, they probably know things, right, all of those things, right? And so they make that decision so there's a consultation that happens, but it's really to encourage. But I think your question became, should you all have that training? Should volunteers, especially volunteers that are in there all the time, have that training? I mean, there's nothing that prevents us from doing that. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea for everyone to have suicide prevention training. Right? That's why coaches, I think, are really important to do because they're with kids a lot, right? And they hear things more. So, volunteers may hear things if they're working in small groups and stuff like that. It's not about they're watching. It's just if you see something, say something and put it in the hands of somebody that can.
Yeah, I think we just want to make sure, because maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think all of our volunteers read our policy book.
Right.
So I want them
You're right.
to feel, I want them to know that's our expectation, and I want them to feel empowered to make that call and be like, because I think sometimes people are scared that, well, I don't know if I should say something,
Yeah.
I'm not a mandated reporter. We want them to be like, hey, go talk to the principal
Yeah.
if you see something.
And we have a sub-handbook, and I can't remember, Jean, if there's anything addressed in there, but that's certainly something that we should be looking to.
I think we just want to highlight it with our volunteers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, I haven't volunteered in the classroom in a minute, but I remember doing so in Moore Street, and I know that the part of it's not a training, but there's a
Orientation.
There's a slideshow. There's something you walk through, and I remember there were I remember one detail that just stayed with me, which is that, if you as a volunteer are talking with a child and you're having a really nice exchange with them about some project they're working on, and then you see their parent at Bow Street, you are not allowed to talk to them about that interaction. So that just, again, I just remember sort of that being an important part of that process. So perhaps it's just a matter of incorporating it into that, sort of slotting it into that kind of, that level of training.
And I think each school does that with their something. I'm not going to say does that, what you're saying, because I don't know, but does some orientation with their staff around, procedures, and they might shadow for a day, those kinds of things. So I think it's really a great idea to be a little bit more assertive about, maybe requiring that extra piece. Because we don't require that right now.
So I think I would just add that I was just thinking, and I've, unfortunately, there have been 3 times when I have either made a call to DHHS or contacted an administrator or a teacher regarding concerns around the safety of a child. In none of those situations was it in a capacity where, as a school board member, it was simply as a community member. And I think in all of those situations, none of them would have required any training. It was just bloody obvious that something is not okay, and that should be addressed. So it's, yes, is there gray area? Of course there is. But are there protocols for how this will be handled? Absolutely. But again, I think just at a very basic level of human decency, I think that should be the expectation of everybody in our community.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I just wonder if I was going to volunteer and I pulled up the volunteer policy, it doesn't reference it in there anywhere, right? We don't even cross-reference it. So I don't know if it's worth it to.
No, I think we should. I think that absolutely should be put in there. I think. I guess I'll own my. I think some of the spirit of the curiosity around this issue does not come from a place of prioritizing the safety of young people. It's coming from with other concerns that have to do with other aspects of our society. And so I think just to say that's, again, where I'm coming from is just very much from a child first perspective, and just to say that is, again, that's how I've been responding this evening, and that's how I've been thinking about it.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that, putting that perspective at all. I just want to make sure that we're clear that that's what we want from people. Sorry, I hijacked your update.
No, it's fine. Danielle's going to do the rest of it. No. Mara has a question maybe about that one.
Yes, I was wondering if we have I believe we have a requirement in the district to do background checks on all our volunteers. Is that cross-referenced here, or did I miss it? I didn't see that described in here either.
I don't believe we do background checks on volunteers. I don't think that's accurate. Which way are you nodding?
So we actually, through HR, Ashley Rand, our HR coordinator, she receives the application, and we actually submit to informe.gov a quick background check. And if it comes back clean, perfect. If it comes back with an issue, it's then forwarded on to the superintendent for consideration. So we do, it's not the CHRC fingerprinting background check that all of the employees of the district are required to have, but we do in fact do that, and we do it each year.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, because I was also thinking about the times when I have been fingerprinted, and I was definitely not fingerprinted before I went into kindergarten to help Mr. White. That was not part of that process, but I did watch the video and submit my name, and I'm glad to know that went through that process as well.
And we do also check the sex offender registry as part of that process.
I was just wondering if that was if we need to have that in our policies, that we will follow that process. I mean, I know the staff is very diligent about it, and I know mine, for example, mine's expired, and they've been like, you need to fill the form out again. We need to redo this check. I think it's like every 2 or 3 years or something. You have to do the process over again. So I don't know that we need to formalize that. I don't know if it's happening consistently across the district.
I'll say it all goes through our office, so we make sure it happens. And then we've been really tight sometimes because people forget to have that done, and they say, oh my gosh, I got this event tomorrow, and we'll say, we don't have that cleared, and we do our best to get it through, then the volunteer can't be there. So we're really diligent about that.
So if our goal is to match our policy to what we're doing,
Practice,
maybe it should
yeah.
be in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Cynthia, I don't think it would take very much to add a sentence that just says what Kelly just said, which is that every volunteer, when they apply to be volunteer, does the thing that you said, the Inform Me.
Well, they
Or
don't
not that they do
technically
it, but that
the district does
Exactly,
that as
that's
part of
why-
our procedure for onboarding a volunteer.
Right. So again, that would just be, it would be in our policy. So both volunteers would know that, but also that the community would know that as just an added
Standard practice.
An added.
Yeah, and I don't think you need to put like what in case you change the methodology you use or what, like, but a background check will be completed.
Danielle, are you comfortable with that kind of, of us maybe looking at a sentence in that?
No, I do like the idea of that. I think it makes everybody aware of what's going to happen, and no one can say, well, I didn't know.
Yeah, great. So maybe Cynthia, we can just go back and look at the tape and get what Kelly said and type it in and do that. Great. So that would be an addition. That would be in addition to the current policy that we're looking at. So thank you for that question, Mauro. Okay, if people have more thoughts about that, they can chime in later, but I do want to get to the next one, IKC, because Jen Gulko has been nice enough to come out and hang out with us and talk to us a little bit about this one. So this one was, as Cynthia corrected me, was a hybrid of where it was sort of a part. We were on a cycle of wanting to regularly review it, but also for the last year, a group of staff at the high school were looking at this question of what is included on transcripts, particularly around the questions of GPA and weighted GPA. And so I think I'm going to just ask Jen to maybe speak about sort of the high level on that, and then we can get into the weeds as much as folks want. But you can see that we are so let me say this. The changes that have been made to this were suggested by by Jen and her team and went through the administration. So this was not, again, Danielle and I going rogue and just making some sweet observations about things. This is coming out of a year plus of work and a lot more experience. So Jen.
I think probably the first place to start is just to share that in the policy IKC, in addition to thinking about and talking about weighted grades and weighted GPA, there are things that are suggestions throughout the policy that were made because they're outdated practices. This has not, so when we're talking about it being a hybrid of some things that have come up in the work of our guidance team, it's also that some of this language, since it hadn't been revised since 2017, has changed significantly in terms of some of the pieces about habits of work and how the dates and the classes things pertain to, and that is because of the work that we did when I first arrived in Freeport in 2015 with the state mandate to move towards proficiency-based grading. So some of that was outdated and needed to change, and that has not been our practice in quite some time for some of these pieces. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but I'm thinking that the time should be spent on asking any questions about weighted grades. This proposal came forward with the work of the guidance counselors, and we have said in years past that we felt strongly about not having a weighted GPA because what we had been told over and over again by admissions representatives is that there are so many different systems of grading and weighting that when a college receives a transcript and then also the school profile, which explains how you grade, those colleges were doing their own recalculation of GPAs and grade point averages and grade standing, class standings on their own, because they know that some kids are coming from a school that scores 1 to 4. Some are coming from a school where failing is a 59, another such as ours where it's a 69. Some that change that 1 to 100 scale into a 4-point scale, and that's how students talk about their grades and see it on a report card. There's so many different ways that they do that we felt strongly that it wasn't necessary, it wasn't a benefit to our students. Fast forward to the number of students applying to college being exponentially higher now, and the concern is that in some of the larger schools, one of them that came up in particular, which is a school that we just about every year have students apply to, is the University of Colorado, which, if you know, has Charlie Mellon went there, and I think it's 25,000 kids that go there and thousands of kids apply. And in the last year, they were explicit in saying there's a point where we can't sift through all of these and recalculate all of these things, and we are looking at some of the very first glance at GPAs, weighted or unweighted. There's other schools that actually report out and say, of the kids who applied here, this percentage of them come from a school with a weighted GPA and this percentage don't. And we're starting to see those numbers, which were even, skew much higher into more schools having a weighted grade, either side by side with the original GPA or standing alone. And the conversations that we had are that we don't want our students to be disadvantaged in any way, shape, or form. One of the other elements that you see in this revision is we've had a ton of conversation as a faculty about whether we took habits of work off the transcript or not, because again, that came from our proficiency work starting in 2015, and started to realize we were one of the only schools that was still putting it on the transcript, while many schools still put it on the report card. And all of a sudden, it changed the conversation to say, what if there was a school that didn't know what habits of work was and didn't understand how it was calculated, even though we've explained it in our profile, and made the decision to take that off of the transcript, which I had shared with the board. I believe that was 2 years ago. So the proposal that the counseling team put together worked with me to revise that proposal. We met with Jean and Cynthia in the summertime and then met with the committee, is that after researching, they'd done extensive research of all the schools that are around us as well in Southern Maine. Their recommendation is to have both a weighted and unweighted GPA represented on a student's transcript, so that when they submit it to a college, they can quickly see both of those GPAs that are there. There's a mathematical calculation that they do based on the courses that students take. And for members of the board who haven't heard me say this before, over and over again, we've heard from admissions reps that they want to see that they are looking at the actual courses that kids take, because they want to see if a student has chosen to take the most rigorous course load that we offer. And so that still is going to be an element that's really important, but this would be an added piece of information that would be a part of that process. I'm not sure how much detail the committee, if you want to share, that they went through the schools around us, who is the guidance counselors did the research and created a spreadsheet of all the schools around us and what their grade calculation is. Even in that, you see that some schools have a slightly different mathematical calculation, even like from us to Falmouth to Yarmouth to Cape to Portland. We are going to calculate it slightly differently, but our calculation that they are proposing is in line with the majority of the schools that are around us, and feeling like it's a way to recognize the rigorous course load that students have taken while not inflating their grade, because we didn't, or their GPA, because we didn't want to do that as well.
Thank you, Jen. That's super helpful. So maybe let's just pause there in terms of us presenting any additional information. Questions from the board about this?
I think you just sort of touched on it, and my question was, how does the 1.05, is it higher than some, lower than some, in the middle, the typical? I was just curious. I don't have a frame of reference for how other people do it. I fully respect the desire not to like overly inflate it, though.
Mm-hmm. This is funny because I think I printed this in maybe like 4 font, even with my readers on here. So I'm going to, and my computer's over there. There are some schools that are, for example, Cape Elizabeth is a 1.1. For some classes, a 1.05, which is what we are proposing for other classes. Falmouth is a 1.04. Greeley is a totally different system. So it's a little bit of apples and oranges because it depends. Greeley also is an IB school,
Right.
so that factors in. And so Mount Arrett is a 1.35. So we felt that
That's
it
huge.
was, which is a lot, and Yarmouth is only 1 point. So I think they were looking at schools beyond as well, schools in New England, schools across the country, and trying to see what they felt was a fair representation to give those students an increase in their GPA to represent those classes while not inflating it.
Wow, that's a wide range.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about that in the committee, in the policy committee meeting as well. And I think my sense of it was that it's sort of two pieces in terms of alighting on a number. Is one sort of just what our administrators think is appropriate, and then the other is how will that be perceived by the institution who is evaluating it, right? Like, what is it if we are, again, if we are stating to a college that, yes, we do have a weighting factor of 1.05, they will see that, and at a certain part of their brain recognize that as reasonable or unreasonable. And
So
I
that would be
think-
part of our profile going forward, that
Yes.
that's how we weight?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So and I think and I think that's an important thing to understand, is I think that, yeah, I mean, we could weight it at like 7.46, right? Like, we could do that in just every, A's for everybody. Like, but just then, it's going to arrive there, and then we're not going to be taken seriously as an institution.
I think one other thing that I would add is that a really important part of this work and research that they did was our whole team felt very strongly about not altering our practices with class rank or salutatorian or valedictorian, which we do not recognize. And we have looked at an extensive amount of research that's talking about the connection between hyper-competitiveness in high schools and how it drives that and the negative impacts on mental health. I've experienced that in my past 2 districts of watching the students who are in that last, are competing for those top slots, that it has I've watched kids have it become all consuming because they're down to, it can be to the 1,000th of a point that makes the difference between valedictorian, salutatorian, or top 10 or whatever it might be. And there's always someone who is 11th or 12th, and feeling like that is something we care very much about, promoting mental wellness and positive mental health, and don't feel that that is something that we need to take on, while even though we're suggesting this shift to include the weighted GPA.
Yeah, I appreciate that, that continued focus, because if my soapbox moment, we should probably make that wider, because try to get it more, the whole idea of the valedictorian. I mean, those high-level schools, I have a kid who's like, wow, this thing, they literally say how many kids that go there that get accepted are valedictorians, you know, and then, so now I have a kid who's like, oh my God, I can't get in, I'm not a valedictorian, maybe I am, I don't know. She's not, but yeah.
But
I
we
mean,
do
if we could-
recognize the bands of magna cum laude and summa
Right.
cum laude, so you can
That's-
assure my
My
friend.
stress ball child,
Yes,
yes.
you can assure her that that is a recognition that's important to kids, and it's recognized at graduation day with their cords and with the program and with the academic recognition that we give. But it's not saying, I'm number 18, you're number 17, I want to be 13. That's not an atmosphere that we have at Freeport High School, and we're very proud of that.
I am 100% in favor of that method, so thank you for that.
Sorry, you're the chair of the thing.
Thanks, Jen, for all your work on this and thoughtful conversations with your team. I was wondering if you could speak to the use of the weighted GPA in those honor bands that you just mentioned versus the honor roll. And also, it looked like the bands had changed a little bit to add another one.
Can you tell me where you're looking? I'm sorry, on letter F?
Oh, yes. On the first page where it says in B3, courses are weighted only for the purpose of cumulative weighted GPA and will not affect semester honor roll calculations. So no weighting in the honor roll, but then on page 2, it talks about it talks about the honor bands. So those are the graduation
Yes.
recognitions.
So we don't, if you look at page 2, letter F, that's how we calculate honor roll. So honor roll is not related to a student's overall GPA. So a student can receive honor roll for just one semester and then have another tough semester, or they had a tough freshman year and then have a great sophomore year. They're still recognized for honor roll. For letter I on page 2, that is only something that is calculated at the end of the first semester of their senior year. So that's not something we ever talk about with students. It's funny, it's probably the number one question I get at graduation rehearsal, like, what the heck does this chord mean? And what does magna mean? And so we that's not a part of our culture to talk about that at the younger grades. That's something that they start to think about really when it's calculated in the middle of their senior year, which is January.
Okay, thank you. So was there, and I see the difference in like GPA versus the grades that they just have that semester. Was there a conversation about whether there should be a weighted calculation of honors or not?
We have not had that conversation, and because I think the purpose of that was more for the colleges to communicate what the student's total academic profile has been over the course of multiple years versus doing the calculation for the classes that they're currently in. Also, I'm not sure if this was one of your questions, but when it says letter F, academic honor roll, all course grades are 3.75 or better, 3.25. That came from the proficiency 1 to 4 grading. So
I never changed.
so-
That was still, I laughed
Nope.
when I saw that. I was like, that was still in here?
Never changed it. So just to make it a little more complicated, that was not a GPA number. That was a different
I was thinking it was.
3.25. Yeah.
Thank you.
That wasn't confusing at that time.
As you're thinking about other questions, I have just a few notes that I found in my notes that I thought I should mention. The other thing that came out of our conversation with Jen and Dana and Liz was the question around how transcripts are used for scholarship funds, and that scholarships have been asking for weighted grades, and I think that was really helpful to know that. I think also we had this conversation. I think Danielle, you might have brought it up, of the question of using of how we're weighting, whether it's for whether we're distinguishing between an honors class and an AP class. And I think what you all communicated to us is that that was part of your research, and the standard seems to be in the communities surrounding us is that the same weighting is used for an honors course or an AP course. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. It's also the nature of us being a small school. So for example, for the juniors, there is no honors English 11. There's either English 11 or AP. So AP is our version of taking an honors class. So that was the other reason. It was both of those things.
Yeah. Danielle, did I accurately speak to
Yes,
that?
because there was some schools that I had looked up that had a different for honors and AP, but then again, when I went back after we talked, they had a lot more honors classes offered at the same time as AP, so you could really choose to do the basic class, honors, or AP, so.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to keep them consistent, because I know some schools have a lot more AP offerings. So like you can take an AP class as a freshman in some schools, which seems crazy, but you can.
We're going to next year.
Oh, really?
Because we're crazy.
Because we're crazy.
AP geography.
Interesting, okay. Yeah, so, keeping them consistent, I think, seems fair. I did have a question about the transcripts and things we were striking from the transcripts.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, some of it was related to specific classes, but the significant academic awards or recognitions, is that like cum laude, summa cum laude, or so we're not including that anymore, or?
That was funny because no one could find an example of when we did that.
Oh.
So that, I think, is old policy language, or I think that it is maybe from the MSMA draft somewhere, but that's not something that we've ever had on our transcripts.
Okay. So we
to
don't
say
put that now?
On a roll or anything like that, no. A student would put that on an application, but it doesn't go. Our transcript is just the information about their historical grades.
Great, okay, thank you.
I think the other piece, and then Danielle, I want to make sure if you have any thoughts or reflections on this, that get those in there. But I think one thing that came up in our policy committee conversation was a question around whether the decision to use weighted grades hurt anyone, whether it hurt other students. Maybe you could just speak. I really appreciated the way in which you responded to that. Maybe you could just speak a little bit to that, Jen.
I think that we were feeling that the calculation was fair. That was another piece of that. And that students still have tons of opportunities where they can demonstrate their progress, or they can be recognized for their academic achievement without setting them at a disadvantage for doing that. We also talked about that there are some students that it might be a motivator if they are unsure of whether they're going to push themselves into taking an AP class, that we are encouraging them to, because some kids are saying, I don't want to go into AP Physics, I'll just take CP Physics because I'm worried that my grade will be too low and I'm not going to take that risk. And now it's not going to be a cure for every student who's unsure, but for some of them to say, hey, take the risk, push yourself, take this college level class, because there's a little bit of a cushion there for the grade if it is a little bit lower than you would hope that it would be.
Yeah, thanks so much, Shannon. And I've found that last point particularly really helpful to sort of think about how, again, as a motivating factor. So it's not only we're talking about kind of like once they're leaving us, right? Like how, but it's also like internal to the culture of the school, how that could be. Again, not a panacea, but a potential boost for some students.
And this will take effect this quarter, so like the transcript or this semester, like, so the close of this year will have a weighted, or no?
No, it would go into effect next year.
Next year.
Mhm.
Any other questions, or Danielle, is there anything else that you remember us talking about that?
No, I had wrote down that Jen had said that it's not the grades that are changing, but that we're acknowledging the rigor of what kids are really doing, which I think is really important, so.
So did, maybe this is a completely different discussion that you and the guidance team are having, but you mentioned it in terms of sort of the difference between, what's a the band for passing being tighter for Freeport than most other high schools. Was that part of the conversation? And no.
I'm gonna head that one off. We brought that up, and they made very clear that that was not part of this. That was not part of this conversation because it's about the transcript.
Yes.
But it is still a remaining question that we might want to look at some point.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Because it's a kettle of fish.
I figured.
Any other questions, or folks feel generally? So we will be making, Cynthia, no changes to this as far as I can see. Jen, thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank
for your
you.
help with that. And thank you also to Dana and Liz for all their work, but also for coming to the meeting and chatting with us. That was really, really helpful to be able to have them there as well. Okay, our last policy is JLF, which if we've changed the name, it is now Child Abuse Reporting, Prevention, and Education. This was driven primarily by law change. So I'm just going to highlight a few a few points, and then obviously any questions that folks have. The definitions, you'll see the we've changed and added definitions here. That's because those have changed at the state level. So again, that is not us getting poetic. That is what the state has told us that we need to say. The child 1C under definitions, the child sex trafficking. That's a completely new definition and inclusion in this document. Let's see. There are a few moments where you will notice that we. I don't think we caught them all. I think a friend of ours noticed some ones that we missed, but we were changing from reporting to notifying. And I will be quite honest, and I don't remember exactly why we were making that change, but that was a change that we were encouraged to make. And I'm trying to think of other things. I think that was the sort of top level. There was one. I'll just flag it, Cynthia. We had a conversation about. There's a line in this that I will not be able to point to it immediately, but where we have the phrase "when reasonably possible," and we raised some questions about why is that included? Should it be included? Are we required to include that by law? And so we are. It has not been stricken currently, but we will get some more counsel on that.
Where was that?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Questions about this? I'm trying to think if there's anything else that needs to be highlighted at the top level. But you will see that there's a fair bit that has been changed. Sections 8 and 9 are completely new. Other questions?
I mean, this is like just super simple, but why would they want you to change it from reporting to notifying? I mean, is it just, do they feel like reporting is just like too heavy?
I think it makes it clearer.
Okay.
And there was a place when we were doing this that it really made it clear, this just makes sense why they did it. And I can't remember if it's out, but it does make it clearer and that they are notified.
And can I also say the notifying person may not be the reporting person? So there may be the notifying person. I see something, I go to Michelle, the principal, and I say, I'm notifying you this happened. And the principal, guidance people, they go through their process, they report. I didn't report, but I notified. And then there's an obligation on the person I notified. They have to circle back to me and say, I reported it. So that's a distinction.
Yeah, Jane, thank you for that. I think the other thing that I'm now remembering is that the use of that word is in its adjectival form and not in its verb form. So we're talking about the... yeah, it is. we all have different professions, and that's relevant to mine. There's all sorts of things we're learning. That Jane can't grow cucumbers. We're describing the employee. It's modifying the employee. It's not. We're not changing the verb of what is happening. We're not saying that the thing they are doing is different. We're just saying that technically this person is defined as a certain thing, and that's what we're correcting for. But mostly, I just wanted to say adjectival, and now I'm doubting whether it's a word or not. But I've been called out on it before, and just for the record, what was the word I was called out for before? It was irregardless. I think I looked into that, and it actually it can be used. It's been adapted. So I was given a lot of hell for that one, and I'll just say on the record that I was not wrong. Questions? Sorry, Cynthia's got a thing.
It's just responding to if you look on page 3, at the very bottom, C, that when reasonably possible is in that paragraph. So it's when reasonably possible, any internal interviews of a child who may have been abused or neglected will be conducted by a person who has knowledge of appropriate techniques for interviewing alleged victims of abuse or neglect. And I think the discussion was, can we remove that, because we always want that to happen.
And the answer was?
We're checking.
We're checking.
Okay,
We don't know. But I think, yes, thank you, Cynthia, for finding that. And again, yes, the spirit of that was also, just really centering the child there and making sure that, again, they have agency in that. Other questions?
Sorry, I think this might be for Cynthia. Sorry to make you come back up again. Getting your steps in today. On page 5, can you remind me, those aren't new requirements, are they? Because I remember us putting into place a policy before, a few years ago, when the law passed about child sexual abuse prevention education. Did we already have that in another policy? Oh, we already do it. Okay.
This is specifically what you have to do.
Oh, okay. For the,
Might you say that into the mic so others wouldn't hear?
I'd be delighted to do that. So if you look on the back on page 6, that discussed the training.
yeah,
What's now here is really specific on what that training is. It's much more training like within 6 months of hire and what it needs. The training about sexual abuse, whereas in prevention is intended to. So it's more specific. So we did it, so they took that out because this is more specific.
thank you, Jean. That was going to be my other question. But we didn't have, I thought we had the child sexual abuse prevention education for students elsewhere in policy, but maybe I'm misremembering. I thought we had passed that previously, that had been part of state law for a while. Because I know that's something that we already do, right? We have, we get a letter home that says we're going to talk to the kids about this, just so you're aware, et cetera. Okay, thank you.
I think just the other thing that I'll just add is just, again, I think this is an example of a policy that, again, it's what we are required by the state to do, but also that obviously it is or perhaps not obviously, but it is a very important issue in the National Children's Alliance reported that in 2022 there were 434,000 perpetrators abused and neglected a child, and 76% of those children, when it was evaluated, were victimized by a parent or legal guardian. So the largest percentage of abuse that is occurring once it is confirmed is happening by parents or legal guardians. So again, just for our wider community to understand the stakes of what we're talking about here.
All right. So we've talked about 3 different policies. We have a motion on the floor and a second to approve all 3 for first read. So they will all be back again for a second read with a couple maybe minor tweaks, nothing major, it doesn't sound like, based on the conversation. Did anyone else have any other questions or comments before we take a vote on these? Okay. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Okay, so we've already done 12, so we will move on to 13A. And do I have a motion for consideration and approval for the resolution entitled, Resolution to Authorize Lease Financing of a $3,421,157 Energy Conservation Project at RSU schools? I'm going to say RSU 5 schools. Be approved in the form presented to this meeting, and that an attested copy of said resolution be included with the minutes of the meeting. Maura, thank you. Malik? So this is the yellow page.
This goes back to looking at, really looking at those energy audit projects that we want to do, and we have to have a formal motion here that we're going to be able to move forward with these things, knowing that that's not going to the financial piece doesn't take place for another fiscal year. And Kelly, do you have anything else you want to add to this motion?
I mean, for me, it's more the legal piece of paper that we need in order to do the borrowing, kind of like the short way to say it. The board has taken action and said that we wanted to move forward with phase one, and we did kind of that during the budget process, but this actually authorizes the borrowing.
Of the lease.
Yes.
So not a bond, but a lease.
Correct.
A $1 buyout lease at the end of 17 years? Am I making them up?
That's what we were looking at when we were doing the proposal, yes. If you read through the document, those terms and the interest rates and those kinds of things get set as part of that process. And you're authorizing the superintendent and the director of finance to work through that.
Okay. My only question was the very specific dollar amount when we were just talking about how they were still sending things out to bid. Do they have all the bids and this is it, or?
They do not, but that would be the maximum that we could borrow for the projects.
Usually you round the maximum number, but okay.
We had EMC and the attorneys get together, and
This is what they delivered us?
product that we have.
Okay, great. All right, any questions on this? So this basically authorizes us to enter into the lease for phase one of the energy audits for LED, what was the other two things?
Lighting.
Boiler, it was for, boilers and electrical panels, right? Fire panels.
Fire access, fire and
Yeah.
door access, yeah.
Any questions, comments on, yep?
I apologize because I think we probably already have heard this before, but could you just describe briefly, Kelly, what the terms of an agreement like that look like and what the payout, and then I assume then we own the assets, like at the end of the 17 years?
So the assets will actually be the improvements that are done within the buildings. So the lighting upgrades, the fire access panel upgrades, the door upgrades that we have as well, and then the boiler at the high school. Those were the bigger, larger ticket items for this. During the process, we did talk about a 17-year with an estimated annual payment. All of that will need to be worked out as far as what that payment actually will be when the interest rate is actually set and the amount borrowed is actually set. Because, like Michelle mentioned, we're still setting it out to bid. It could come in lower than we expected, and we wouldn't borrow the full $3 million that's authorized in it. So we will work those out, and we'll definitely be reporting out to the finance committee, which will ultimately come through then to the board as to what we're doing with that. But we all know, well, at least the joint committee saw, and for the most, and the board as well, saw kind of like the planned out expenditure timeline that we have over, or that I developed for the infrastructure projects for all the phases of the project, as well as full implementation of the vehicle and equipment replacement. So we're really trying to work within those constraints and hoping that we will be able to meet, to come in under what we actually anticipated for a payment. They were modest. They were trying to be modest, but at the same time, they weren't sure of the market, so they were trying to do a little bit higher on the interest rate than they thought we might actually land at. Those will be worked out, and again, we'll go through finance and ultimately report back to the board where it gets settled.
Other questions? Great. All right, we have a motion and a second, right? Yes? Great. Then we will take a vote. All those in favor? None opposed? Thank you. All right, so we are now, item 14? We didn't scratch that one, right? No, okay. This isn't, oh, no, I know that. This isn't to actually hire some, because I'm looking for salmon.
Oh, gosh.
Okay,
No
okay.
salmon. No salmon.
I was like, I don't have any salmon. Okay, great. So, all right. So then, do I have a motion for consideration and approval to authorize the superintendent to hire a special education teacher at Freeport High School, funding to come from 2 unfilled special educational technician positions at Freeport High School? Kelly and Cheyenne, thank you.
Okay, you may recall a similar motion we had back in January because we were having a really hard time, particularly at Freeport High School, hiring educational technicians. So I came to the board and asked if we could use the funding from 2 ed tech positions to hire a 1-year only special education teacher. We didn't get applicants. Our sense was it wasn't the best time of year, but we thought we'd try it. We believe we'd have better luck because now is hiring season. So there's going to be no addition to the budget. We just would like to do this again, but formalize the process so we could hire a teacher using existing funding from ed techs at the high school that we've been unable to fill. So that's what the motion is. And if we hope we get a great candidate, then I'll have a salmon sheet in there for you, and we'll bring that name to the board. But this is just to create the position using that funding.
Okay, so basically what this does is it makes it permanent, the 1-year piece of what we voted on in January. Yes. Basically make it going forward. Yes. That's, okay. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Public comment? Have even fewer people now than last time. All right, then I would take a motion to enter into executive session for consideration and approval to enter into executive session as outlined in 1 MRSA Section 4056D for the purpose of discussing administrator negotiations. Kelly? And Danielle, thank you. All those in favor? All right, none opposed. 9:28. Library?
Right to the library.
Okay, and take all of our stuff?
Take everything.